evening. Welcome to yet another episode of Strive India. This is, in fact, in run up to our various episodes which we have been doing. And today we are going to discuss the most important event as far as India is concerned, the ongoing visit of Prime Minister Modi to the United States. And to discuss this, we have with us a very eminent personality, Ambassador Anil Trigunayath, who is going to join us and share his views. Welcome to you, sir, and welcome to the show.
Thank you, General Saab. It's such a great honor to be with you. And it is going to be an interesting topic, I guess, to discuss because everybody is talking about that.
Yeah, that's right, and it's current. So before I launch into our discussion, a brief word about you. The ambassador has served in the Indian missions in Cote d'Ivoire, Bangladesh, Mongolia, USA, Russia, Sweden, Nigeria, Liberia, Libya, Jordan. I think there's hardly any place left for him to actually have not served. And even after retirement, he has been very active in the international circuit as part of various organizations which he is now in the government of India as also in various non-governmental organizations. He's currently with the Vivekananda Foundation as a scholar of VIF. He had also served in the embassies of as ambassador of Jordan, Libya, and High Commissioner to Malta. So welcome, sir. Once again, we couldn't have asked for anyone better than you to discuss
Thank
this
you,
very
sir. Thank you.
important.
So kind of you.
So before, sir, we get into the discussion today, I think let me just put the ball rolling by giving the stage. Uh, as far as you know, the PM Modi's visit to USA was much talked about. It is followed after the visit of Rahul Gandhi, who had gone to the US probably to preempt the Modi visit. I don't know whatever was the purpose. We are not going to discuss that issue, but given the kind of hype which is being now given to Prime Minister Modi's visit, especially both by the US and by our country and by the powers that are friendly to both of us, it appears that it is going to ruffle many countries' feathers. Whether they are in our neighborhood or whether they are a little away from our neighborhood. But cutting the optics out of it, so how do you view this visit? Its importance? What are going to be the takeaways? And how do you think the world order will be after this visit? Will there be a major change as far as India's stand is concerned? The floor is yours, sir. I'll not bore my audience with my one-way dialogue, sir. All yours, sir.
Well, thank you, sir. It's really, I would say that the hype is very much there, but as I try to put it, that the visit is full of symbolism and substance.
Okay, sir.
So how it is, because see, India and US partnership, despite the problems, difficulties, divergence in approaches, have been quite steady now for many years, especially since the disintegration of the Soviet Union. We have seen the relationship has moved uh, year after year in a higher bracket, so to say. But during the past 9 years, I would say, it has really taken a different turn altogether. And that is probably, I mean, I do not say that because the Americans have suddenly changed their colors, but it is because that India has grown significantly in the global stature once again. And that
Yes.
is because we are the largest democracy which is functional. We have seen what happened there on January 6th. The transition of the government was so difficult in the country, which is calls itself the greatest democracy. On the other hand, we saw in India every now and then 800 million voters casting their vote and the transition takes place. So that's the beauty of India's democracy, which dawns upon the whole world. Then you see it has become the most populous country in the world. That means the largest market. And Americans are basically trading nations, whether it is for defense, for anything else. So they like to look at the markets. And subsequently, the India is also a nuclear power and also a space power, which counts. And you have the biggest youth dividend. So they are actually the main drivers of India's importance in the eyes of the global powers. And today, Whether we like it or not, the only hyperpower is United States of America. Every country in the world wants to have relations with them or possibly good relations with them. So there is nothing wrong. But in today, the kind of geopolitics that is playing out, that is between Sino US and Sino Russian, Sino US competition, and the West versus Russia competition that is playing out in the Eurasian war, I think that has given a greater salience to India's importance in the matter, for the simple reason that we are partners in Quad, we are partners in many other organizations together, including the recently launched India Pacific Economic Forum, and we have global comprehensive strategic partnership with the United States. During the Russia-Ukraine war, India maintained its strategic autonomy, as it is called, for its own self-interest and for the interest of global peace, dialogue, and diplomacy. And it has been telling both Putin, Zelensky, and Biden and everybody else. And I think that that will be a major discussion point even now. This is not something that the Western countries like it, for the simple reason because they are used to subservience of their opinion by many countries in the world, including all their partners. But India is not one of those partners. So when you stand on your own, and I always felt and I always propagate that if you are dealing with the superpowers, you have to deal from the position of strength. And that's what precisely what Prime Minister Modi says. He does not mince words. Even when we say we are not in for alliances, we are natural allies, as Vajpayee said, and Prime Minister Modi today at the Congress also reiterated
Yes.
that particular point. That does not mean we are going to be partners in alliance system, the traditional alliance architecture that the Americans envisage. So what we are
Yeah.
going to be that we are good partners. The hyphenation and the relationship, the hesitations of history, they are all over now. So India is looking at its own interest to become a major power. And the fact that the Americans now, which used to criticize the Indian democracy, and there were these 80 Democrats who said, including some of the Indian origin, who told Biden to rake these issues of democracy, human rights, and all in India. And the fact that John Kirby mentioned that India is a vibrant democracy, as vibrant as United States, is a major endorsement and realization on their part that what India stands for and what is India's value today. So that is
Uh,
something that they have begun to realize.
Mr. Ambassador, I would like to take on from some of the issues which you raised, and the first one is that we while there has been a positive hype to this entire visit which is going on in the US, there has been some chatter, which is the contrarian view both in the United States and in India. I remember one of the tweets which came out from I think Mr. Daniel or somebody, who said that while dealing with India, the US must look at the entire process from the point of view of shared interest and not shared values. So probably somewhere he was mentioning something about not being pro democratic force, but being purely driven by the key driver being the national interest, which is normally the case in real politics. But similarly, there have been some other voices which are being raised against this entire pro-India stance of the United States. And in our own country, there has been some kind of how should I say, even on the issue of yoga, which is universal, people were talking of some camera asan and so many other things which were being talked about. How do you view the impact of these negative clatters and chatters which are taking place in the media, as well as also in the geopolitical circles?
Well, I would say that these are the pitfalls of democracy and
Yeah.
probably essential for keeping the right markers on all sides. But very often they tend to be today obfuscated and driven by I think that some kind of flight of imagination more
or
than
short
anything else,
or a
or
short
shortcut,
term view, or a short
short
term
term.
view
Right. I mean,
of,
as far
of,
as
of
US and India are concerned, I would say we have shared values and shared interests,
yeah.
and it is not one or the other. So values and democracy is the biggest value that we always wear on our lapels. So I think that that is something that the Americans, the whole Western world recognizes it, and
Absolutely.
nobody can deal with this. Yeah.
Yeah, one of them is the oldest democracy, and the second one is a largest democracy. So that goes without saying. So values should dictate our relationship. That's my view
Yes.
also. But taking on from something which the Prime Minister today told in the Congress address, and which struck to me like a very very different note. He mentioned two things which were different from the common, rest of the issues,
Mhm.
people to people relations, etc. That was all well known to everyone. First thing he said was very very clearly making that while we are partners there would be diverse views, and it is in our interest to respect each other's diverse views and go ahead with common interest, global common interest, etc. That was one thing which he made very clear in front of the entire who's who of United States. It requires a lot of guts to do that. I think that is something very positive. But more importantly, which is now a strategic signal to our neighbors or to our so-called detractors, is that when he said that India has arrived to become a net security provider in the maritime
Mhm.
domain. And this he has clubbed it with the news which is going on in our internal media, that the theater commands are now virtually cleared by all the three services, and we are going to have two land theater command and one maritime command. Now these two statements viewed together, I think, conveys a signal to our so-called adversary number one and adversary number two of things to come. How do you see these two adversaries? I'm talking now in terms of China and in terms of Pakistan reacting to this entire development, especially in the light of a very clear statement made by Prime Minister Modi. So,
Well, number one, what he tried to convey to the House, which means the whole of United States, was that their differences are normal. So we need to have them, the divergences, but we have more convergences. And that's
exactly.
why when he quoted William White about the symphony is on play. So
Absolutely,
which
absolutely.
very clearly states that everything apart, we are on the same page as far as
Correct.
the security is concerned. Now, it is also a fact that when he says that India has become a net security provider, so this is a comprehensive security in many ways. It is not only, I mean, we are a resident power, and you are the military person, you know it very well, in the Indian Ocean. We control it, and he clearly said that in the Indian Ocean, India can secure it, India can provide support. That's all he very clearly outlined it. So that is the security dimensions, and that gives jitters to China more. And that's why China and Pakistan are trying to come together into the Indian Ocean via Gwadar port and all those initiatives, parking their submarines in Gwadar and other places. But
Yeah.
the fact remains is when he says that India is a security provider means also that whenever there is a problem anywhere in the world, especially in the global south, India is the first country, whether it's neighbors or beyond, to provide the humanitarian assistance, the relief, to come to the rescue of everyone from pandemic down to the Turkish earthquakes. So that also shows the strength and the power of a country to take action in connection with the humanitarian efforts. So that is something that is all combined together, and that you are a power is acknowledged as a first responder by everyone in the neighborhood. And this India has been doing for a long time, from Maldives to Colombo to Nepal, wherever there is a situation, to Bangladesh. So wherever there is a problem, so that shows that this is a comprehensive display and exercise of benign power for which India is ready. Now, how our friends look at, because they always believe in a zero sum game as far as India is concerned. Pakistan cannot think beyond terrorism. That is their only tool in their kit. But at the same time, right now, as we know that Sharif Saab is moving around in France trying to beseech and plead with the IMF, the Director General, to give them some loans. Their economic condition is in terrible shape. Despite that, they have continued to give more money to their defense sector because they think India centric policies have paid off, which has actually failed that state. They should realize it sooner than later. If not, they will simply become a province of China. Now, As far as China is concerned, it realizes very well that India US bonhomie or proximity can have a direct impact on the China's security. They know it. And they know that India is the only country in the region and even outside, given the India's goodwill everywhere. We have seen the various United Nations, I mean, that is an indicator of support to our resolutions, different parts. And the highest number of countries are supporting India in every which way we look at there. So the China is very much realizing it. And that's why Sajid Mir case is just today. And yesterday
Yeah,
it happened. China put
yeah,
a hold on it. So what China
absolutely.
is doing is blindly supporting Pakistan as a tool against India rather than directly taking on India. So the border we have given, I mean, we have been standing on that. America recognizes India's importance in that. And that has dawned upon the US also that this is one power and one country, one leader who can stand up to them at the moment, eyeball to eyeball, given the proficiency of armed forces, of which you are the most proud person belonging to that. So I must say that this is a comprehensive power that India is beginning to display despite many deficiencies. Now, you mentioned about the theater command. I think this has been long awaited, and I have heard in many discussions with my friends in the army that it should have been done long back. But I'm
Yeah.
happy that it has been done and cleared now because this is the need of the hour.
And it is coming with 4 star, so that is something which is giving a huge message to our neighborhood also, that we mean business, we will have now almost 7 4 star generals in our defense forces, which is quite a jump, quite a quantum jump. But more importantly, I wanted to seek your comments on something related to not only security but also to economy. Do you think that the Chinese economy will now get adversely affected should the way Musk has, Elon Musk has announced about Tesla, and in fact, there was an announcement made by Apple that just by having 1 or 2 factories, these guys have double. I mean, they have got a 10% jump in their sales,
Yes.
and the market is there in India, money is there in India, the people are there in India who are actually going to consume. So somewhere, do you think that economically too, and Micron, you are aware, is and with the
Yes.
semiconductor industry coming into India, I think we are looking at Japan, which was of the after the Second World War, the kind of push they got, Japan, South Korea. Are we on that kind of a plane and that kind of a level today, that there's only one way to go, and that's up?
Yeah, you are absolutely right. In fact, the biggest strength of India is its economic opportunity. And I
Yes.
think that that is what is currently driving also, as I said in the beginning, the Americans, because today they are our largest trading partner with $194 billion in trade. Services
Yeah.
sector is far bigger. And they are also looking at India as a very big market, both in the defense sector as well as in the other technological sectors. Because if we have to grow, we need to have the latest technologies to break the barrier. So that only can come from US and the West. So I think that that relationship will continue, and US has, I think, shown its will now by virtue of the Indux Acts, or for that matter, the ICT, the initiative under which the earlier TTIT, those programs that have been going on. But today, that the Jake Sullivan, when he came here, the National Security Advisor, and conveyed the clear message that we are working on removing any hurdles to transfer technology. As you know, from the United States, to get anything was extremely difficult. It is
Yes.
never easy. I mean, anyone who has negotiated with them knows that everything comes with a big rider. And that's why India has been hesitant
And
going
big
all
cost
forward
as well. And
at
big
big
cost
cost,
as well. Yes.
right? And they still have the levers with them till the end. So that's what has been the trust. Now, whether it is in the defense sector, the interoperability through the various agreements and others, we have seen that this kind of a thing that is happening shows that there is a special status given to India by their companies. They're looking much better. Tesla's statements were really good, and I think they will be very much needed. Their electric vehicles, the Starlinks, or his Twitter by itself
Yes.
is quite a major tool of communication. So when he says
Absolutely.
something like that, it goes across the world. So I think
Absolutely.
that this is the economic opportunity, as I said, fifth largest economy, going to become the third largest economy. and then for some time it will remain there. But as far as China is concerned, I think that most companies in the world are still looking at China plus one.
Okay.
They are not looking completely to move out of China, because see, their value chains are still far too complicated, far too integrated, and that's the reason United States changed its policy from decoupling to de-risking.
De-risking. That's what you are
And
mentioning.
Blinken is there now in China, Beijing. Yesterday he met Xi
Yeah.
Jinping and everybody. He tried to iron out some differences. So both India and US, probably in my view, are following a policy with China of competition with cooperation, knowing too well that China is going to be a major challenge for both.
So I suppose India is a little one step ahead of competition with cooperation, with a assurance, or creating a capability of deterrence, suitable deterrence against the Chinese misadventures, if any, that could take place. But my second question, leading from the economy only, is that there was a statement which came out from China, either in the Global Times, or I think it was attributed to Xi Jinping, where he said that US still cannot do away with the supply chain linkages which it has with China, which you mentioned also in the passing in your comments. So, could you elaborate on this issue, because this is something which I think our audience also needs to understand, that it is not going to be an overnight transfer of industries coming to India just by making of statements by Bill Gates or Elon Musk. It is going to be a long haul, and it's not going to be so easily that decoupling or de-risking can take place. Even de-risking has got a lot of issues
Yes.
involved. It is a time consuming process, and given our red tapeism in our country, I think people have to be first assured of ease of doing business, and then inviting people into our country. Yeah, your views.
No, you are right, absolutely. I mean, I think that it is a long haul. It is not going to be quickly there, because for the simple reason that it is true that there is a greater integration at the moment, which is the creation of the West. Of course, China's entry into the global and manufacturing supply chains, and it really controls them. And despite all the tension that has been going on, Sino-US competition or US-India competition and everything, trade with India has grown to 130 billion from $100 billion. Trade with the United States is over $700-800 billion.
Billion
So,
dollars.
and Japan, with every geography, and that is in favor of China. You see, so that is something that shows clearly that the China is going nowhere right now, unless there is an internal implosion in the country. Now, that
Yes.
will have very different ramifications. But until then, what we are looking at is that there will be alternate efforts to create new value supply chains. But in the meantime, what America has done is created a little more a problem for itself. And that problem is now continuing with the de dollarization, because
Okay.
by what they did in Russia, by cutting him out for SWIFT, Putin, and to confiscating their 360, $80 billion from in their banks, and to imposing those sanctions, it divided the world today. So you see, there is a greater rush for people to join BRICS, to join the China-led the financial mechanisms, and so
I,
these weaponization of these financial instruments have really created a major mischief in the global markets. So America will have that very big challenge also at the moment. But as far as India is concerned, we should make our DBI, doing business with India, far more better. And as Prime Minister says, from red tape to red carpet, I mean, I think that should become a reality. I remember
reality.
when I was in New York as State Commissioner, one day I was giving a speech and I said, now we have a single window clearance system. It was the 90s after the economic reforms. One
Yeah.
person got up and he asked me, how many windows behind that window? So I think that is something we need to get rid of today. And
Yeah,
we
I
need
think.
to create the world class infrastructure.
Yes, yeah. I think well, India is on course to doing this kind of a change in our internal environment of doing business, including the infrastructure. You'll be amazed to see what is coming up in UP. And
Yeah.
I've been here for last 3 years now after my retirement, and I find the change is taking place so rapidly that people have started moving into this part of the world also. So I am looking at UP also getting onto the map of India in terms of economic dominance. That is a secondary issue. I'll now switch over to a little bit of security issues. I'll give the context, and then you could give me a diplomatic response to what we should do. Essentially, what you find is that the Chinese have uh, commenced their old ways of doing things. Yesterday, Shahbaz Sharif made a statement saying that they have signed a 4.8 billion deal of making Chashma 2 hydel project, which is again in the northern region of Pakistan, which is essentially for electricity and other generation. And he's qualified it by saying so. In Pakistan, China remains trustworthy of Pakistan, and blah blah blah. Right? That was one. Second thing is the Chinese are continuously now building up resources and infrastructure in the Tibet and Xinjiang region. They're moving things forward over a period of time. That is earlier what was happening was there were limited number of forces here, and rest used to be mobilized from their other theaters and brought in this place. Now he's doing a forward positioning of this. Of course, India is also commensurately doing its own forward positioning, reorienting various what should I say various resources which we have got from Pakistani theater to the Chinese theater, and they are also doing a number of exercises opposite us. In fact, a few days back they did an exercise with 100 attack vectors. So because they have this superiority in numbers, they are trying to intimidate us. Will this intimidation transcend beyond the so-called demonstration and positioning of troops to something along the LAC of a violent nature? What's your take based on the overall geopolitical environment which we are in today?
Well, Janasab, I have a little bit of a different take on that. I
Okay.
think that China is far more smart and proficient in gray zone warfare, which
Okay.
is far more effective in today's time and age.
Mm-hmm.
And which is what they're indulging in India, outside, everywhere against India, and they're creating it. As far as Pakistan is concerned, I have begun to believe that it has become a sort of a state
A
of
dump, a
China,
dump.
another Xinjiang. So what they are doing is, of course, they continue to try to show us intimidation, but I think that they know very well that on man to man, they cannot match us. So the only way they can perhaps overpower any country in the region or whatever it is, or even against India, they can be more effective, is possibly through technological warfare. So I think that is where they have a much greater edge in the cyberspace and other place than us, and that's where we need to probably catch up much more, because you know very well that the future wars are going to be more autonomous weapons wars, if at all, whenever they happen, and they will be far more disaster and dangerous. Why I say that China probably does not want to intrude even in Taiwan or whether on our border beyond a point. What they will continue to do is do a little bit of Tawang, Galwan, these kind of things will continue, not a full-fledged war. What
Mm-hmm.
instead they could at one time, because the Pakistanis are foolish, so they can probably prompt Pakistan to take some action here and there. Of course, Pakistan's economy cannot sustain it, so they cannot. What Pakistan currently is doing is, because to get the $6 billion loan from the IMF, they are running around everywhere, China, UAE, everywhere, to get the equivalent amount of 6 billion guarantees from certain countries, because
That will be
without
very
that, the IMF is
mm,
not entertaining their request. They said you get the
absolutely,
guarantee. So they have
absolutely.
sold these four berths in the Karachi port to UAE.
Mm-hmm.
So that is how they are generating the funds basically to match this so that they can get the IMF loan. Not that the
Okay.
IMF loan is so very essential to them, but the most important thing is because that will give them a foothold into the Western areas. And the West also, including United States, continue to pamper them. We have seen it off and on, $450 million deal and all, which the Americans gave it to them. I hope the Prime Minister will be raising it with, because he mentioned very clearly about terrorism and all this. You
Yes.
cannot dissociate terrorism from a state which indulges in it and has an instrument of its foreign policy. So they must be very clear on these issues, which are of our own sensitivities. So I
So
say and I repeat,
Yeah, so I suppose you are hinting that low level clashes, well, possible, but it is going to be more in the gray zone and in the areas of non military sphere where we are going to see a lot of activities taking place against India, which may harm us economically as well as also psychologically. It might attack our various institutions and systems, including through information warfare. Well, sir, point well taken, sir, and I think that that is supposed to be the likely approach. Of course, Pakistan, you cannot rule out doing any stupid action. Like you said, it's a foolish country ruled by foolish people. So I don't know how much of a sense is going to prevail in them, at least at this juncture when they are on the brink of actually imploding, as also caving in
That's
because of caving in because of economic pressures. Uh, there was one more small little point which came up during one of my readings on this issue, where US also is not very keen to destabilize Pakistan. And
yes.
while they are going in for a increased engagement with India in order to manage China, I'm not even talking of containment. I'm just talking of managing China, and it is also in the interest of India to manage China through additional support which we can get, because we know we have to fight our own war. That is very
Yes.
clear as far as India is concerned. Do you think this small little rider of Pakistan not being disturbed by India could spoil party for us in this visit in terms of some engagements? Because today itself there was a meeting with our foreign minister, and there was one lady, I'm forgetting her name, Priyangal or somebody, whom Jaishankar said that she should not be part of the group which is going to meet him, because I know her views. She will never understand the Indian
Pramila
point of
Jayapal.
Promila Jaipal. That's right, Promila Jaipal. I just struck my mind off. So and he will clearly cancel the meeting. So, do you think this is going to create some kind of ruffling of feathers as far as this visit is concerned in terms of the overall outcome?
No, I don't think that, I mean, this Pakistan factor will come in. But you are absolutely right. I mean, Jake Sullivan himself has said, and Defense Secretary Austin, he said we need to stabilize Pakistan. While I think he was in India at that time, he made this comment. So there are two things to it. I say that one thing compared to our system, with where we somehow our officers disconnect with the foreign counterparts after the NDC training and all that, the Pakistanis continue to maintain close relations with all the defense people they have met. And Lloyd
Okay,
Austin and, the previous chief of the staff, they were bum chumps, friends. So they have these very clear lines. Secondly,
different
if you
lines.
remember, yes, communications between the
Yeah,
generals for
yeah,
both sides. And
yes,
if you remember, the Pakistan was instrumental in the Chinese thaw that happened in 1974 when Nixon met. So it was through Pakistan that Henry Kissinger went, and Pakistan facilitated the interaction between the US and China.
and the ping
And
pong diplomacy started thereafter.
yes, with diplomacy. And then Afghanistan, they continued to use Pakistan because they created Taliban with Pakistan and Saudi Arabia. So the
Absolutely, sir.
Americans happy in all. F-16 they directly were not giving, but they tried to give it through Jordan and some other countries to Pakistan.
Yeah,
Now they
yeah.
want to upgrade them, so they gave them $450 million. So we need to understand one thing. That's the reason our strategic autonomy position will hold us in good state. That they are our good friends. They understand today it may be a relationship of compulsion and choice, both, not either or. So for them also, India is the biggest bulwark against the Chinese hegemony, and so they need to contain. So we need to look at it this way, very realistically, rather than being euphoric about what is there or not. Eventually, when
Absolutely.
things will start moving,
Yeah.
we should get
We have,
technologies like jet deal and others, so it's
correct.
perfectly fine.
We have to cut the optics out of it and take
Yes.
what is realistic. Sir, last question before we take the questions from audience. There are a number of questions which have been raised by our audience as well. We will take them on. This is a very nagging feeling in my mind based on some inputs here and there, that there is a huge divide between the State Department and the Secretary of State, the Foreign Affairs Department of the United States. Both are looking differently at the situation globally. Uh, do you have any idea about it, or it's just a rumor which is going around?
Well, I think that Blinken himself clarified, and so did the White House, that there is no disjunct between their approaches. But as you know, Blinken is a very professional diplomat, and Biden has been one of the longest serving foreign
Serving.
policy.
Yeah.
He has been dealing with foreign affairs for a very long time as vice president, as senator, and others. So I don't
Absolutely.
think there, there is any disjunct. Sometimes what happens is that you use your foreign office spokespersons to do something, convey certain messages, and then you do
Exactly.
exactly the opposite, if that is the case. So
Yeah.
that's very much a play way of working out things with different conveying messages, or so that is very similar, like Russians do. For example, Kremlin is and their foreign office, well, foreign minister we talk two different things and do two different things. So it happens it's very common among the superpowers to create this kind of a confusion. But as far as India is concerned, the more important thing is there is a bipartisan support for having a greater, closer relationship with India. And that is more important in my view.
So I should say that we should look at the visit of Blinken to China in that light and not any other light, and start making inferences which are possibly not correct. So
They're
with that
premature.
said, yeah. So with that said, we'll take on few questions from our
Yes,
audience.
please.
Sir. One of the question which has been asked by Shritik Kothari, which is that. Ask sir, we all know China will try to pressurize us on the LAC by repeating Galwan, Tawang, etc. How can we realistically impose differential heavier cost on them for such a unilateral action? Uh, I suppose you could tackle it from the diplomatic perspective. From the security perspective, I can add certain points
Yeah.
after you.
Well, diplomatically, I also say that, the relationship between India and US, closer partnership with India and US will also act as a deterrence, more
Yes.
importantly. And therefore, I think that we need to continue to have good relationship both with Russia and with the United States in the changing scenario, changing. And while we are continuing to have these, we will also continue to have a dialogue with the Chinese as we are doing it on the border all the time, whether in WMCC or with the generals on both sides. So I think all these three are very important. While security, you will know that we are already beefed up and we will continue to beef up. We will stand up, not an inch will be given to China, irrespective of what they do. But as I said, the China at the moment, if I read them correctly, and I was there only in 2019 last, that if I read them correctly, they probably are buying time for 10, 15, 20 years before
Absolutely.
indulging in major war because they
That's
want
right.
to reach a position that they have targeted for themselves.
I would add few security related issues on this. First of all, when we talk of interoperability, we look at it from a very narrow band. I think we need to widen our horizon. I would like to remind the viewers a few months back last year, when an incident had taken place along the LAC 300 odd in Arunachal Pradesh. 300 odd Chinese had come along the LAC and tried to disturb the status quo there. At that point in time, timely information was provided by our friends of this movement. And I think that is the meaning of interoperability, that our ISR is going to get strengthened tremendously, because our ISR capabilities are definitely at a much lower level. But when it gets clubbed with your friends, it is definitely superior to the Chinese. Look at it from the maritime domain. The arrangement has been made for illegal fishing, surveillance of illegal fishing along the coast. Brigadier Arun Sahgal was mentioning about it. But it is not only illegal fishing. See, if I am able to track illegal fishing, I can track their vessels, I can track their submarines. So any information which is coming to us from our friendly forces will that much improve our level of response and the speed of response. And for
Correct.
that, we are in location, and we would be able to react faster than what our adversary is going to do. So I think both these things, when they club together, when we club the diplomatic and the security dimensions together, we will achieve. And also in interoperability comes the cyber attacks and other aspects on which we would be relying on our partners for information, which would help us in dealing with such attacks in future. Because I would just like to share the kind of losses which we suffer from cyber attacks every year. They
Correct.
go into billions of dollars. $10 billion was last year's. $22 billion was last year's figure. So these are huge figures for the global level. India also would be having some part of this $22 billion losses which are taking place, and tremendous losses. Besides the data which is being stolen, that's a different issue. So, we move on to the next question. This is by Brigadier Rakesh Bhatia, and he says bonhami between the US and India, on the other hand, PRC and Russia warming up to each other. What is the future world order involving these major countries of the world? I mean, he's looking at some kind of alignments and realignments. So, this is purely your domain. Let me seek your views on this.
Well, it's I probably maybe one of the few voices who say that the world is moving towards a Cold War 2.0 kind of a situation.
Okay.
Everybody today talks about the multilateralism, multilateral institutions, and polar, different kind of polar words. But what I see is that uh, with the it will all depend on the outcome of the war, Russia-Ukraine war. It is still not over. If it
Okay.
moves into a third dimension, that is the nuclear dimension, then it will have an entirely different ramifications. But whatever happens, Russia and China are on the same page as far as the West is concerned. So I always say that the uniqueness of India's position, strategic position, strengths are very important both to Russia as well as to United States. And India's strategic uh, autonomy position has also been praised both by China and the Pakistan,
Mhm.
because that shows that they understand that that way India is not going to be a lackey of anyone. Now,
Yeah. And,
why I say
yeah.
is
Go
that
ahead.
China, sir, China is like wants, of course, it will be a supreme power in the two. We know that Russia, because of the way this war folly has gone on, that they will be decimated to some extent. It's the strongest country, richest country, everything is there. But despite that, the economic condition will take them down a couple of notches for
Yes.
a few years.
Yes. Yes.
But what happens is that I always believe that Russians have also been emotionally invested with India, especially Putin personally, and I have met him many times.
Okay.
The thing is that Russia needs India to counter China, while he needs China to counter the West. So, this is the kind of an equation that will play out, and our strategic autonomy will provide us probably the same kind of leadership as we had in the 50s.
Okay, sir. I think we are absolutely running out of time, because we decide that we have a very fixed time frame. Otherwise, people, I mean, would like to keep on listening to you. I'll take the last question, and thereafter we will end our discussion. This question is basically again by Shritik Kothari. Ask. It is fine to ask. I mean, ask you. It is fine to collaborate with US on areas of common interest, but what about the constant interference into our internal affairs via reports, rankings, fundings, NGOs, media? We can't overlook this. We had discussed this in passing when we talked
Yes.
about the chatter, the counter chatter which is going on as far as our US visit is concerned. But you could dwell some time on this, and then we will
Well,
close our discussion today, sir.
Well, Shritik, I think that we have to contend with these. These are the defaults that are very much a part of a democratic system. So they will continue to do so because this provides them a softer tool to rattle a power, rattle any country. And just to say that since we are a democracy, everybody has a right to do whatever. This civil society is so big and they can do the right kind of things. Their organizations have a certain pointed role to play in these. But we need to counter, and the facts need to be presented. Like, for example, the External Affairs Minister often talks about various issues on the ground and tells them clearly what they actually stand for. But we'll have to develop a better communication strategy. At the same time, everything that comes in the media or by these reports must be vetted correctly. Are there any things that we can address to correct the situation? No country is perfect, no system is perfect. So we should not simply sit on a high pedestal and just start thinking that we have achieved the nirvana. It's not the case. We need
Yeah,
to be, there are weaknesses. Those weaknesses have to be addressed because they are part of our internal security architecture. So
absolutely.
sometimes these reports can be, while we should fight them on the communication strategy level, we must internally internalize them and analyze, are they real or not? Are the facts real? So if the facts are real, we must address them.
So I think, sir, you're recommending a two-pronged approach. First of all, it's kind of a check on you, that you check back about your processes, your procedures, and take a remedial action if that particular narrative requires. But at the same time, be ready, have the machinery, have the infrastructure to spread a counter narrative so that the impact of this is reduced. And I believe we are doing also of a similar nature. You must have found, sir, a little change in our counter narratives. Various issues were being raised in the US and in Canada and in the United Kingdom, uh, but you found that these have been very quickly, through various
Yes,
efforts, through government means or through counter narratives, these have been prevented from occurring for prolonging. Like earlier it used to happen,
yeah,
information war used to continue for almost 7 months, 8 months. That has actually stopped. It needs to be further shortened, this life cycle of these counter narratives. So with that, sir, we have totally run out of our time. In fact,
thank
before I close, I will request all our viewers, those who are present and those who are going to listen to this video once it is there on the YouTube, to please like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. As far as this channel is concerned, support us. We are going to bring very high quality discussions, which will be of immense value to both scholars and practitioners of security. So thank you very much for having
you.
joined us.
Thank you so much,
uh,
General Sir.
a very good evening to you. We had a lovely discussion,
Thank
sir.
Likewise. Thank you so much.
Right, sir.
Thank you.